We've come to the diagram for Lesson 3, taking up Genesis chapters 4 through 11. These are a continuation of the very early inspired myths of the Old Testament. Inspired. They are definitely an inspiration of the Holy Spirit coming to us out of the ancient mists of time. They tell us much because, of course, the very foundations of the whole Bible are laid in the first 3 chapters of Genesis. If we comprehend something of those, which we've tried in the first 2 lessons, we will begin to appreciate what salvation history is all about. And on this slide, you'll see down at the bottom a black line with arrows. It comes out of the fall, because up above it is the cataclysm of the fall, and it continues on to its culmination, which is not in sight yet. The Old Testament is a large part of the Scriptures. Up above the beginning of that line, we'll see a peculiar little triangle open at the bottom with some divisions in it. It is an attempt to depict something that psychoanalysis has told us, that the human being has an unconscious mind, a vast resource that has fallen beyond our control. Yet it has influence on us. Sometimes it actually overcomes our conscious mind, and then we are in dire straits and need psychiatric help. But we also get intimations from that unconscious mind in many other ways that we're not conscious of, obviously. Above that, there is a little division called subconscious. This we are more in contact with. We have dreams. We have different impulses that come to us that aren't necessarily conscious, but they are a part of our mind. Then there is a little bit on the top, which is our consciousness. It's really small. As we look at the whole, it is very small. It's like a leaf floating on a vast river. It is what we think is our motivation each day, something conscious, however it's being influenced. And now this whole configuration is because of the fall. At one time, we believe we were whole and holy, and our mind was completely a resource at our disposal. And in that regard, I like to use that little water formula that you all know, H2O. In the beginning, it's as though our mind, or we human beings, were H2O. Well, yes, man and woman, H2, and O, Holy Spirit. Now, human nature is good, but when it's infused with the Spirit, it has capabilities that lift the human for friendship with God in an equality of holiness. So, H2O would be human nature before the fall. However, with the fall, we lost the Holy Spirit, and this may certainly explain why we only have a little bit of consciousness. And when we're no longer whole and holy, we are in need of salvation. So that's what that little diagram is talking about. And the reason for it is just above it. You recognize, I hope, that there is the diagram that we began with. A 3-tiered diagram, the top tier being Godhead, the bottom tier being mankind, and a center tear of the Holy Spirit, the wondrous bond of love that was in the beginning. But look what's happened. There's a jagged line, a breaking, almost a tearing across the loss of the Holy Spirit between man and woman, a jagged line. It has brought with it death, disintegration, isolation, and shame. It is a broken picture. And down below, man and woman, they're broken inside of themselves. We know how life goes on with all kinds of tearing and problems and things that cannot be solved. Salvation is to mend that. But in the meantime, God can't let these two just separate and go their own ways. He binds them together with the law. The law begins with a curse on Satan for having done this. And in the 3rd chapter of Genesis, God writes, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. This we can see only in retrospect from what will happen in the culmination of salvation history. It's a prophecy that woman's seed, woman, not man, we usually think of man's seed, woman's seed will crush Satan's head. But there's also dire forecast about woman bringing children into the world in pain, but longing for her husband, but her husband will rule over her. This is not what was arranged by God between man and woman when the Holy Spirit was their bond. Now it is the law that holds them together, and not a pretty picture. On this same diagram we have a new form. It's supposed to be a kind of explosive form, marked God, and I will use that form throughout the remainder of our diagrams. Of course we can't draw God, and that's a horrible trial of trying it. But God is dynamic. He is unchanging but purposeful. He is the author, the lover. But the dynamism is something that we can't even come to grips with. But there is our attempt to diagram God. We see an arrow coming from God over to the law. He is giving the law to hold his creation together so that salvation history can begin. And below is another explosive shape named covenant, because with the story of Noah, we enter into a covenant relationship between man and God. The covenant is sealed with blood. There is an altar upon which Noah sacrifices. God then makes promises to his people and demands certain things from them. They cannot eat blood. They must not kill each other. Those are the strictures that God puts upon his people in covenant. The covenant will bind the two together until the Holy Spirit can fulfill that covenant in time to come, with the coming of salvation. For now, it is the intermediary bond between God and his people. Through the covenant, God makes demands on his people. They are to live up to those demands. And he, in turn, promises. He makes promises to them. In this first ancient covenant, he promises not to destroy them with a flood again. and he asks certain things of them. This reading also has many mysteries involved in it, things that we really can't answer. It sounds as though there are primordial people living at the time of Adam's sons. Cain has killed Abel. Cain is now a wanderer on the earth, but Adam and Eve have another son, Seth, and Seth will be the continuation of the people. But with Cain and Abel has come, because of the fall, murder, lies, insolence, pride, and that evil will grow to the time of Noah, when God brings a flood to end and wash away the evil that has just proliferated on the face of the earth. From Noah, we have another bridge, a second genealogy rooted in his children, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Ham is cursed because of his insolent and, he does not honor his father. He shames his father. He laughs at his father. And for that, he is no longer one of those who God will bless. All of his descendants will fall under the curse of Ham. We see this in the Bible when we have, let me see if I can find it here, Noah's children. All right, it's in the end of the 9th chapter. Cursed be Canaan, that's Ham. A slave of slaves shall he be to his brothers. He also said, Blessed by the Lord my God is Shem. Oh, if Ham is cursed, Shem is blessed. And let Canaan be his slave. Let Ham be his slave. Canaan is simply another name inserted for Ham. God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem. And let Canaan be his slave. Japheth. Well, I think all of those who are listening to me are probably descendants of Japheth, for he, in the ancient world, was considered the father of the Indo-European peoples. That is, all of the people of Europe and of Near Asia and India. Japheth is the progenitor of those peoples, which includes us. And how did we come to knowledge of God? In the tents of Shem, the Semites, the Jews, as they will only be called after the exile, but at this point we know them, and they are the descendants of Shem, the Hebrews. So this is an explanation of the fathers of the races after the flood. And they are bringing us up through Seth. These are the descendants of Seth, Noah is. Through Seth, they will bring us to Abraham, through those ancient genealogies, attempting to explain some of the peoples on the face of the earth. There are many other peculiarities in these readings. There's the beginning of the 6th chapter that says, When men began to multiply on the face of the ground, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were fair, and they took to wife such of them as they chose. Is this a glimpse of an idea, then, that not all of the people descended from Adam are the only people, but there were other aborigines of some kind, primordial peoples. Well, Jesus gives us a strange parable about that, in which he says that Satan has created people who look like people but aren't people, and that it'd be very hard to explain. But there, as I say, are many mysteries embedded in this reading.